So I want to thank for the invitation to Sydney Ideas. It's great to be on campus. It's my first visit here, although I visited Sydney once before, some 15 years ago. I have 4 key points relating to the role of the humanities and the social sciences in environmental discourse, and on the one hand, and the entanglement of bodies and environments. I'm kind of squeezing the human body into the environmental domain. It complicates the story significantly because it invites questions of alienation and ethics. I won't say much about those questions, though, but it does relate to what John referred to as sustainable relationship, and quite seriously, in a way. So, I hope this works. Where is the receiver of my signal?
Just keep trying.
It reminds me of an old song, Operator, operator, give me Jesus on the line, somehow. There's no signal, no line. Okay. So that's my first message. The post-war framing of the environment has been faithfully reduced to an object of natural science. It is becoming clear that this framing is itself part of the environmental problem, because what currently counts as environmental is also social. Humanities knowledge enterprise needs to return its attention to social theory and the humanities. Is this working, or? Okay, thanks. The way in which we model the environment is informative about how we speak about humans and the rest of the scheme. Naturally, that's why we model. That's the whole point. And this is the old framing of humans in the environmental domain. And it's made in 1986, the famous Bretherton diagram of ecological analysis. And this is, by the way, a simplified version. There is a vastly more complicated version, and in that version, the role of humans is even smaller and insignificant. So clearly, the human element is marginalized. It's a side issue. I mean, forget it almost. And you can model things without considering humans. Recently, another model was developed by the International Human Dimension Program on Global Environmental Change, 2010. And this is one of a series of messages. The key point here is that there is a significant space for the social sciences and the humanities, namely in dealing with the responses to the environmental problems. So the argument is, if you want to understand human behavior, you have to, which is a part of the whole chain, you of course have to have the humanities and the social sciences involved. And now we live in the so-called Anthropocene. And I think that precisely because of the Anthropocene, something more is needed. I mean, these old models, even the second model from 2010, which I showed, is getting heavily outdated. Human signatures are everywhere, and we have to focus on that. Of course, it's not. The point has been made that the notion of the Anthropocene is a bit anthropocentric. I mean, it's not just us. the planet isn't ours, and to understand it, we have to consider other things as well. But our role is somewhat specific. And the arguments and points I've been mentioning derive from a paper which is going to be published in Environmental Science and Policy. It's part of a 2-year project called RESCUE. It's an acronym funded by the European Science Foundation, mostly. And the paper is written by social scientists and humanities scholars from various countries in Europe and one American. And the whole point was to reconceptualize Anthropos in a way which would be relevant for the Anthropocene, and to outline how the humanities and the social sciences might be important for contributing to environmental discourse. This is an old image from 1997. I frequently use it because I think it's so powerful for illuminating the environmental age. The artist is clearly telling us something. He reverses the roles of humans and animals. Lobsters, in this case, the lobster is speculating on the menu while humans are trapped in the tank. And it forces us to think beyond the aquarium, as I call it. And this is a kind of a critique of the modernist take of the environment, and if there is a postmodern take on the environment, it will have to have humans in the tank, and to recognize that every human account is necessarily situated somewhere. It's not out of the tank. Point 2, the new era characterized by measurable global human impact, the so-called Anthropocene, implies a radical change in perspective and action in terms of human awareness of and responsibility for a vulnerable Earth. And something big is brewing, and we, the authors of this paper, suggest that we go back to a famous notion by philosopher Hannah Arendt, the notion of the human condition. She was referring to the Nazi era and the Holocaust, and we're suggesting the concept may be useful to deal with the place of humans in the Anthropocene, namely the new human condition. And the challenge for humanities scholars and social scientists is to outline and define what the new human condition is, and to deal with it in terms of practical action. Point 3, one important domain for environmental research is the entanglement of bodies and environments. The environment is literally embodied in humans through social practices and epigenetic processes, and moreover, humans themselves partly consist of microbial ecosystems. An important issue now is to broaden the notions of anthropos to allow for such conflation and fuzziness. I bring into the discussion this funny cartoon. It may not sound funny to you, but if you know the saga, you may appreciate the humor. A year ago, it was discovered that the importers of salt in Iceland were using so-called road salt, which is used for defreezing roads in winter, selling it for the production of food. And you can imagine what happened when people realized that the salt in their bread, in their meat, and the rest of it has been, that's the cheapest salt on the international market. It's road salt, industrial salt. And so people started to ask what's happening to our bodies. Will we discover, or maybe the second or third generation, the impact, etc.? And there were debates on European standards, there's a lot of them, on national agencies, etc. There was a lot of humor too, and here we have in the cartoon, a baker who is competing for salt. Give me my salt when the road constructors or transport people are using it for other purposes. So this brings up the issue of the porosity of the body. After all, there's a lot of material flow through us, and we literally are relational flows. And epigenetics tries to deal with the impact of the environment, which is hereditary, which is not stored in the DNA material, but nevertheless may bring on impacts for the second and third and fourth generations. Next slide, and I'm almost done. This is, so the point of epigenetics and road salt illustrates partly the way in which our bodies are situated in environments that are fleeting. The business with microbes also underlines our relationality to the rest. There's a growing field of microbiotics. We are microbes in a sense, and much of our body mass is microbes, mainly in our guts, and most of our DNA is that of microbes. And there's a lot of research going on now, partly in medicine relating to that. And again, this is the fleeting body, sustaining bodies, and this is what I meant with sustainable relationships, and we need to maintain this somehow. And this is my final slide. One more. The collapsing of body, society, and environment necessarily invites applying the governmental gaze throughout, from the cellular to the global level. The challenge now for anthropology and related disciplines is to document these developments in different contexts, to theorize their significance, and to explore what they imply for notions of the human, hierarchies of what I call biosocial relations and governance. At the moment, we have kind of two separate discourses on governance. On the one hand, we have the resources and commons discourse of the Ostrom team, for instance, and on the other hand, we have discourse on the body. Sheila Jasanoff is one example. She speaks of bioconstitutionalism. And my point is that, strangely enough, these discourses do not seem to meet. We theorize commons, resources, environments on the one hand, and human bodies and medicine and the rest of it on the other. And the key people do not cite each other, and I'm suggesting we need one discourse, because the body is environment and part of the environment. So I hope that bringing in the body underlines the notion that we need to think about sustainable materialism and everyday life at the same time. I think I'm done. Thank you.